Greetings internet peoploids, Darkly Dave here. Have I reached peak poser yet? I'm joking. Today I thought I'd tell you the story of how I got into the goth subculture, because I'm out of video ideas. No. But it's a perfectly gloomy weather outside. Nice rain, overcast, so I thought I'd light a few candles and sit you all down. I grew up in... well, I was born in '89, but grew up in the 90s, which was a perfect time to encounter the films of Tim Burton. So, starting off with things like Batman Returns, and then as I got a bit older, getting to see Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and Nightmare Before Christmas, and that aesthetic really clicked with me. Also the Addams Family movies, and of course Addams Family on the TV because reruns. I just was always rather drawn to the darker elements of art and culture. Maybe partly because my parents were also really into fantasy stuff, so that was already sort of in the background. A lot of witchy stuff and things like that. And I also had a fascination with anatomy, and thereby things like this little beauty here, who I just recently got, which is an anatomical skull. And I was also a dinosaur kid growing up, so dinosaurs were everything, and, you know, bones. But I had a fascination of how things worked and how they were put together, so there was that element as well. And I really like the colour black. You know, and I've always been a pessimistic sort of person, so there was that. But I didn't get to really get into the subculture until my late teens. Abby on NCIS actually was a major sort of kicking off point from there, of looking it up on the internet when I finally got access to the internet at a decent speed, because we never had dial-up. We didn't get the internet till 2008 maybe, and it wasn't great, so I spent a lot of time on DeviantArt, which is also how I incidentally encountered the furries for the first time, who are mostly pretty alright people. But that's beside the point. Evanescence was a thing as a teenager, so that was an introduction, and then Nightwish as well. An introduction to more of that style of music, which then led me into a lot of old school metal music. Things like Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, stuff like that. Which again, it's that sort of aesthetic. And finally, looking up goth specifically was helped in part by Neurotically Yours, the Ill Will Press Foamy series that used to be on Newgrounds. Yes, I'm that old. And there's a main character in that, Jermaine, who is a goth. So they make references and stuff, and you look these things up and you discover you actually rather like this particular band or this particular piece of music, and it leads you further down. And I ended up buying a book on the goth subculture because I'm a massive nerd, and the first thing I do when I get interested in any sort of subject is immediately buy a book, which I think I have up here. I ruined my lighting, but sod it. There it is. The first book I got was Goth Craft by Raven Digitalis. which is actually a book about the intersection between Gothic culture and witchcraft. Mostly Wicca, but all sorts of witchcraft. It actually has an entire section devoted to various occult groups and schools of thought. But it also has heaps about the Gothic subculture, which I was already interested in, and I found this at Borders, I think, on the shelf. So it's that standard synchronicity thing of, is it destined to be, another wanky sort of sayings like that. But it has things like makeup styles and whatnot. But it also makes references to music, which then led me to getting, obviously, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, Bauhaus, Joy Division, because I found I really liked the classic goth sound. And then further on down the line, finding more and more bands, because at the time the Borders was next door to JB Hi-Fi, and JB Hi-Fi at the time had a lot of these sorts of bands on the shelf, so I was able to go through and grab a heap, and then a few more from Amazon. Found I really enjoyed it, and then through Amazon also finding more books about the goth subculture, so I consumed every piece of information I could get my hands on. I went up to Newtown in Sydney, which has kind of been gentrified now and it's a bit more hipstery, but it used to be a major hub of goths, punks and various other alternative groups, like rockabillys and such forth. And so going there, I think it was, I can't remember the name of the shop now, but they had the Gothic Beauty magazine, and they also had Rue Morgue, which were two magazines I ended up getting subscriptions to because I loved the articles and stuff in it so much that I had to have more of these. So I ended up getting as many of those as I could get my hands on. I've got to renew my Rue Morgue subscription actually. And Gothic Beauty is now digital only, which is kind of disappointing because I really love the print. I love books. So magazines being ephemera, they're kind of like books. Ended up getting things like Mick Mercer's books. I managed to track down, I think, every one of his books. But also book recommendations from the Gothic Beauty magazine led me to ones like Encyclopedia Gothica and Goth Girls Don't Taste Like Chicken. And I also got Neurotically Yours and Nemi comics as well, which were really fun to see. So that was kind of how I got into the goth scene and got further and further into it, and here I am now. I think it's been nearly a decade. There was also a shop near us called Gallery Serpentine, which had a main shop in Newtown and a wedding specialist shop in Robertson, which isn't too far away from us. And friends of the family do swordplay work, which is actually a troupe I'm now part of, and they used to get a lot of costuming from Gallery Serpentine because Gallery Serpentine were one of the few people in the area at the time that were doing proper full boned corsetry, but also doing dancers corsetry, which means it sits a bit lower and it's not quite as tight. You can move a bit more, which is what the girls needed for fighting in, because it's very difficult to fight in a full corset. Like, it's not a lot of movement, especially if it's tight-laced. So that was how I came to find some of the higher couture Gothic clothing. before that, you knew about the punky stuff, but I hadn't really encountered this thing of decked out Victorian vampires that look like everything I ever freaking wanted to be. Like, these people were all models, like in all the pictures, but gorgeous clothes and lace and brocade and intricate fabrics and details, and just wow, blew my mind. But unfortunately, Robertson actually, that shop went out of business, and the Newtown one has now moved, and it's only by appointment. But they do have an online shop, Gallery Serpentine. They're on Twitter and Facebook as well. Look them up, seriously, it's worth it. Some of the first clothing I got was actually from a shop in the UK called Drac in the Box. I think Carmilla was in charge of it at the time, and she skipped town after I'd ordered about £50 worth of stuff without ever actually sending it to me, so I wasn't overly impressed by that. But because of that, I ended up looking up other shops around the world, specifically trying to find ones in Australia, which is how I found out about Newtown, incidentally. But there's one in Perth called Mame that's actually quite good. I've got a few things from them. And there's another one, I'm not sure where they are, called Uncle Fester's, that's mostly a witchcraft shop, but they carry pretty much the full range of alchemy gothic products, which is a lot of pewter work. They do earrings and stuff that I've got quite a bit of jewellery from them rather. And there was also Pretty and Twisted was near us. They were a shop in a major shopping centre that was also where the Borders and the JB Hi-Fi were, so it was kind of this trifecta. And they had Doc Martens and gothic clothing, which was a bit more affordable than the Gallery Serpentine stuff, because the Gallery Serpentine stuff, it's hand sewn, it's bespoke, it was really expensive. Like, it was $120 a shirt then, and I was a poor ass high school student, so I could buy one item a year. I'd still kind of limit myself to that, although I did get some other things that, like, they now carry things like Loose Lemur and Pentagram and a few other things, and I've just recently come across Killstar as well, so that was fantastic. But Pretty and Twisted is where I got my first ever 20-hole Doc Martens. These are the very same pair, 10 years older. I'm rather blessed in having rather narrow feet, so I can fit in the girls' ones. I don't know what size these are, I think they're 10s or 11s. But the girls' ones have got zippers up the sides, and the boys' ones don't. I don't know why, it's a very strange design choice. So it means that you can zip your boots up rather than spending 50 years doing laces. I got a few more things from them over the years, but they went out of... Well, they didn't actually go out of business, they closed down because the lady who owned it and ran it went to Vietnam, I think. I think she was doing volunteer work out there. So they closed down, but now there's Cyber Shop. They've just turned up in the last 5 years or so. So they're there, and there's another one in Narellan. But that was how that all came about. So I still occasionally get stuff from them, but I don't really need to buy that much anymore, and I do find that I really enjoy modding things. The only trouble is I never have time and end up with all these half-finished products everywhere. But that's how I got into the Gothic fandom. Subculture. Actually, one of the first things that I ever got was this collar, which has seen better days and is starting to delaminate because I used to wear this to high school. And my parents actually bought it for me for Christmas. I saw Abby wearing one on NCIS and turned around and said, I would like one of those. My parents were slightly taken aback. So yeah, I used to wear a dog collar, a denim jacket, because the school uniform was specifically you had to wear a blue jacket with no branding on it. But it didn't say anything else beyond that. So I had a blue denim jacket, a dog collar, used to wear my tie down about here somewhere, because I was so cool. And I had a bracelet with a it was a puppy collar with a padlock on it. So that, I might save some of this for another one talking about my equivalent of the baby bat stage. But there was that, and I couldn't afford Doc Martens at the time. Like, you know, $300 for a pair of shoes, there's no way I could afford that. So I ended up getting a pair of massive work boots from Big W for about $70 when they first opened up down our way. So that was a thing. And yeah, I got into Gothic in about 2007, 2008, and I haven't left the subculture since. I don't get much chance to go to clubs and stuff because they're all way up in the city and they don't really get going till stupid hours in the morning, and they don't really play music I'm into. That and clubbing's not really my scene. But that's how it all happened, folks. If you're still here, feel free to leave comments below on how you got into the goth subculture. It's actually really nice to see comments from people. Just, it makes it known that people are actually watching these stupid videos, because YouTube's algorithm is not friendly, especially if you don't upload very often because you work all the time. I'll have links over here to other videos, probably more gothic-y ones. I also talk about bisexuality and some other LGBTQ plus stuff, and links to Twitter and Tumblr below. Be warned, my Twitter is quite political and my Tumblr is a bit of a mess. So thanks so much for watching. Bye!